Today is World Food Day, and the theme is water is life, water is food. Leave no one behind. You know, the essence of having a special day like this is to draw attention to the need or to tackle hunger in the land, because the reality is there is hunger in the land. And if public awareness is not drawn into it, nothing will be done about it. And that's why a day like this is dedicated towards, creating that awareness so that the necessary action to be taken to tackle hunger can be done. What's your take on this World Food Day?
Well, I think today is a great day. The world celebrates the importance of food and feeding to the entire globe. And it's unfortunate that as a continent, Africans are still grappling with the challenge of food security, of food sufficiency. We have not been able to actually deal with the challenge, even though God had given us so much in terms of land resource, weather, and of course, water. It's unfortunate that we have not been able to harness this God-given resource to be able to feed ourselves. And so we are still the continent. The world is still pitting, looking for how to give us food to eat. Africans lack clean water as we speak. I can remember and relish with nostalgia that in the 1970s, even in the remotest of our village, there was pipe-borne water flowing, and people have access to clean water. And today, 2023, we cannot boast of that same luxury in that community or even in the major cities across Nigeria, which is quite unfortunate. And I do hope that the current regime will need to really put emphasis in this critical area. Number one, that we can see how we can become self-sufficient in terms of food production, that we eat what we produce and produce what we eat. That will just be right. And then, of course, we'll be able to also produce some for export that will earn us some hard foreign exchange that can also help us ameliorate the challenge of the macroeconomic instability that we currently face. And also to lend a voice to the sustainable debate. Water is a resource that can be depleted. And that's why, of course, globally people are also speaking to the issue of using non-renewable source, because water depletes. If the lessons from the Lake Chad is anything to go by, I think we must also be looking at ways to conserve the body of our waters so that, of course, we don't lose that privilege that nature has given to us.
Think the federal government can do, and then as a society we need to do to ensure that a day like this is given the proper attention it ought to be given, and then empowerment programs are being done to ensure that poverty, if not reduced, is being tackled to a way that people can provide for themselves and earn better living.
Yeah, I think this is where really we need to commend the president in terms of the agenda he tends to pursue. But then, of course, we will need to speak to the ministers in the various ministries, especially the Ministry of Agriculture and Water Resources, that there is so much that needs to be done in these two regards. And people must look at this as the kind of the cash cow for this particular regime, that we're able to produce enough food. And of course, we are able to give people access to potable, clean water, because water, as they say, is life. And then, of course, we can't have life without having good water. Government has a huge role to play in this regard. And I think communities are also willing really to partner, because I can remember in the 1970s when, of course, the government then was providing water, community partnered with government in terms of providing labor and the rest of it to ensure that they get pipe-borne water. As you have it today in our world, you see almost every house you find in a major city drill boreholes, which of course is also not healthy to our environment. because, of course, you are cracking the earth crust. And what that means is that, of course, we become prone to earthquake and tremor that happens all across the place, even though scientifically we were not lying on earthquake region. These are the issues that government must take and proactive and strategic measures to see that we preserve what nature has given to us. Government must make definite policies on how our body of water is used. Government must create, of course, farms, industrial farms, because this is important. I feel personally that all this money that we are throwing at poor people, thinking that it can bring them out of poverty, can actually be converted to an investment fund, which of course can be used to produce food that our people will eat, and then of course stay alive and then become productive in their life. And this is where government must look toward. If this government must succeed, we cannot and we must not begin to think of killing poverty by throwing money at poverty. No nation has ever conquered poverty by throwing money at poverty. What conquers poverty is productivity. Now, when you give this bailout, or you call it palliative, or whatever measure you call it, to people, this thing really never add to economic benefit or growth or development. So what government need to realize is that if we must allow our economy to grow, these monies must be put to productive use. Just imagine that we can create a agric zone where rice, where corn can be produced in mass, and then of course we can export this product. Don't forget that the last regime even had to ban the exportation of corn, because it became essential commodity for us, because those who produce feed for the animals says, oh, they don't have enough corn, and we have to even be importing corn. That is unfortunate for a nation that is blessed with a fertile soil, arable, uncultivated land. I think this is the area where the government need really intervention and see how we can have industrial farms where we can produce these goods in quantity, and then we can sell even to nations around us who may be needing these products.
We have to leave it there. The next story is about the 2024 budget. The Federal Executive meeting had a meeting yesterday where an appropriation bill is being proposed, about 26 trillion for 2024 budget, and the target is to submit the appropriation bill by December 31st to the National Assembly so that it can meet up, for next year. Now, if you look at 2024 budget compared to 2023, the 2023 budget is about 21 trillion, and now 2024 budget is going to be 26 trillion. So that's you can do the arithmetic and see the difference. But talk to us, why do you think we need to spend more this time around, 26 trillion for 2024 budget?
Well, I think the real challenge that the nation faces at the moment is, of course, looking at the infrastructure gap that has been identified, that, of course, the nation will need up to about 300 billion US dollars to be able to meet up with the infrastructure deficit that we currently having in the country. And so even if you're looking at 25 trillion budget, is still small, especially when you put it vis-a-vis what the exchange rate is today, 1,000 to $1. And of course, that will not even be enough really to provide some basic infrastructure that the nation badly needs. For me, really, it's not the figure. I was speaking somewhere yesterday, and I emphasized the fact that our budgeting system needs to change. This incremental budgeting system can't work for us anymore. I think the nation needs to take a very good look at our budgetary process. Budget is a contract between the government and the people. It's a management tool that the government can use to really look at its operations. And so we must not just look at it as mere estimate or whether revenue come or revenue is not coming. These are issues that, of course, that must agitate the government at this current time. We look at it, the last year budget, of course, we knew that, of course, the government could not even raise up to 30% of the sum of that budget, of course, which, of course, we have to resort to a lot of borrowing, which is putting pressure on the nation. Yeah, people may argue that when you look at our borrowing against what people call the GDP, it seems to be that we are still within the threshold to borrow more. But when you look at it, what we currently are generating vis-a-vis the debt that is hanging over us as a nation, you see that we have actually reached the upper limit of our borrowing. And I think government must also know this and then be very careful how we put money in and the areas we are going to put these resources so that they can be put into where they can produce more resources so that we can have bigger and robust economy. But if this bulk of this money is going to be used on social interventions, I can tell you that it will not be able to kickstart the economic growth which we so dearly need as a nation.
The benchmark, according to the appropriation bill now, what is being proposed as the benchmark is to peg it at $73 per barrel and then at the exchange rate of 700 naira. Talk to us, how visible is this? This assumption of pegging the dollar or the exchange rate at 700 naira and then putting it at $73 per barrel? Assumption.
I think it's very, very ambitious. The oil market has been so volatile in the last few years. And so it will just be erroneous for us to assume that we can have that oil price at that same level, especially when the world is looking out for alternative to crude oil and its a source of energy. That has one problem. Again, it's putting an assumption of 700 exchange rate when realistically at the moment we are actually not able to buy dollar and dollar is not available in the market, and then you are packing your budget at 70, for me is also unrealistic. And I think we should have to be very, very realistic in terms of our appropriation. Everybody knows that as we speak, the Naira is still not properly valued. That is why we can see the volatility around in the market space. So government must realize that, look, let's be objective. Let's tell people the truth. And that is the only way to be able to get the buy-in of a lot of our stakeholders. And as long as we are still keeping some things in our chest and we don't want to reveal all the truth to the people, you will not find the necessary support that we really need you to get to the real Eldorado in the terms of economic development, which everybody is hoping to get. There is no need to promise us too much. And I don't think that's what Nigeria needs at the moment. What we need is a government that is sincere enough to look at the numbers and the figures, the way they are currently, and they use it to project for the years that are coming. As a matter of fact, we should even be projecting that, of course, the price of crude is going to go down. $74 per barrel may not be realistic at the end of the day. Now, if you're looking at your exchange rate, we are looking at it. What is the real market price of the dollar to Naira as we speak? Government must need to put this and factor it into what they are doing. And I hope that the National Assembly, which is, of course, legally empowered to look at the Appropriation Act, should be able to factor in these issues into the appropriation of 2024 so that, of course, it will be realistic and achievable.
All right, the next story is about the inflation rate. The Nigeria Bureau of Statistics has released a new figure for September, and which shows that the inflation rate has increased to 26.7%. You know that that's very critical when it comes to consumer price index, looking at the value of goods and services in Nigeria. Are you surprised about this figure, 26.7%? Are you surprised?
We cannot be surprised because, like everybody really know, our economy is exposed to external shock. Whatever happens to the macroeconomic indices here affects, of course, the cost of what we eat, because we are barely a consuming nation. Almost everything we use here, we import. And because of this is affecting the cost of living. So if the cost of dollar goes up, it will affect the cost, even what is coming out from the farms. And this is why the inflation rate will continue to rise. And until we get to that point in our national development, where we have to put emphasis on us producing the things that we eat or eating the things that we produce, these figures will continue to increase because as they remain conditioned by the exchange rates in the market, we can really not go anywhere. The cost of petrol is there, the cost of diesel is there, adding up to the sum total of what is determining the rate of inflation. So these are the issues that Nigeria will need to work on to see how can we begin to produce our petrol locally so that we are not relying excessively on foreign exchange. How can we reduce importation and increase exportation so that we can begin to have more dollar in our economy, and then, of course, ensure that people are not holding this dollar and they are circulating with the economy, and then the market price can really properly determine its rate. These are the issues, and these are what are affecting inflations in our environment. And, of course, if these issues are not addressed, then, of course, the figure will continue to rise.
Great. Our news analysis will take us next to Abuja, where you are, and it's about the leadership training for the Public Account Committee that was held yesterday. Interestingly, you were part of the training. You were one of the stakeholders. I would like you to talk to us about the essence of this training and what the partnership is all about, then what some of the keynote speakers talked about at the training.
Well, I think it was a new day for the National Assembly, especially the House of Representatives. You know, the Public Account Committee is one and the only committee recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to look into the public financing of the country. They look at issues that has to do with revenue generation, issues that has to do with expenditures, issues that has to do with the national debt. They look at the administration of our budgetary system. And this is what the committee especially focuses on. And their working document is actually the audit report. And it was shocking yesterday when we were having these conversations, especially at the unveiling of the committee, that they were even themselves worried that as we speak, what they have as a working document is the 2019 audit report. The 2020, 2021, the 2022 audit reports are not available. And this, of course, cannot make a nation really to go. It's like doing post-mortem exercise, which, of course, for me, seems an exercise in futility. If, of course, the business that were done in 2019, this is the time we are reviewing it, how can this really help planning? And which, of course, is not sustainable. And I was happy yesterday that the chairman of the committee stated that, of course, they are looking toward using technology to see how they will be able to reduce the volume of work that the committee has to face. And when the Accountant General of the Federation was speaking, and he said, of course, the volume is really huge because over 900 agencies will have to submit reports. And of course, this comes in volumes of Ghana must go to the committee to review. And of course, between me and you know that this is not feasible looking at this report. So we must begin to see how we can use technology to drive the process. And like we had advocated yesterday in the presentations, especially local strategic issues, one of the issues that was raised also was to see by the civil society organization was the fact that there need to be a law to empower the Auditor General's office, for example, to conduct performance audit. But for me, the question was, how do we do a performance audit without a performance budget? Now, if we're still depending on one line item budget or depending on what you call budget that has to be historically, traditionally done the way it is, we cannot get anywhere. So we need budget that will be action focused, like they call it performance budget. And this is what we need to do. And of course, the committee is set, and there are a lot of people that are there very cerebral. And these are people that are ready to work, and they have put out their roadmap, how they want to run in the next 4 years, how to build capacity. They need to do a lot of exchange programs across the globe to interact and interface with other public account committee, because almost every national assembly anywhere in the world has this committee of public account. And so these peer review mechanisms also to be put in place by the committee to see how they can really be effective in the discharge of their responsibility. And this is to see that auditing is done real time and such that if there are infractions, they can be corrected before the next fiscal budget or fiscal year.